Since President Mike mentioned the possibility of a traitor among the UA faculty, it became the most discussed subject, and it seems to be the most interesting one to speculate. Before I started my diggings for the theory, I searched and read what other people thought to be the traitor, and to be honest, most of them were hardly believable. The Kaminari theory, which seems to be quite popular, is very slim and hardly makes any sense if you take the time to look into it. The suspicions on him are simply based on what ifs. What if he's just faking his weakness and he's in fact a really smart guy? There's also the argument that he's a walking GPS, but that's his quirk. You could say that Koji is a suspect because he can talk to animals, therefore can communicate with the villains incredibly easy. I don't think the quirk should be considered evidence in this case. For example, in the summer training camp scenario, even Todoroki could have gone to the toilet and sent a quick message with the location. In fact, anyone using their phones could. That's why I strongly believe the attack was planned well before the students arrived, and I'll come back to this later. Additionally, there's the Kaminari's draft. His initial design looked like a villain, but the same goes for Deku's draft. The author has to change it because it looked like a villain. Initial character designs aren't an argument, especially not in an anime where there are multiple scenes pretty much stating that the quirk or the appearance of someone has nothing to do with being a villain or not. To be completely honest, I would love to see Kaminari being the traitor because of the potential consequences and for the plain fact that he would make for a badass villain. But while I do love the idea, I just don't see it happening. Another popular theory is on Toru Hagakure. Joy Boy made a video on it covering all the arguments about her, and when I first watched it, I started to think that it might be true. The evidence was well put together and there wasn't any flaw in his logic. But when I took a closer look at his points, they were easily argued against. I'll just go through some of them quickly as I don't want to debate them since that's not the point of the video, but I feel like I have to say why I disagree. Let's start with the votes for the class president in chapter 12 of the manga or episode 9 of the anime. In the manga, there are 16 names displayed on the board, except Uraraka, Ida, Todoroki and Hagakure. We know that Uraraka and Ida voted for Deku, and Todoroki voted for Yaoyorozu. Count them and they add up to 19 votes, thus 19 people, Hagakure being the missing person. But what I found interesting is that in the anime scene, there are 17 names displayed on the board. If you look at the very bottom one, it reads Hagakure Toru. If you can't read it, just look up the kanji for Hagakure's name, that's what I did, and compare the two. They are exactly the same. Of course, this could be an anime mistake, but it just doesn't make sense to let that slip in the anime if it's going to be a major hint for the traitor reveal. On the other hand, the manga might have chosen to leave one name out, either because of space or for symmetry, but this could very well be a joke on Hagakure for being invisible, an invisible gag. Hagakure came with the idea of going to the shopping mall in chapter 68 or episode 30. As soon as they entered the shopping mall, the whole class 1A got recognized. Anyone could report to Shigaraki, but it wasn't the case. Just look at this panel in chapter 69. Shigaraki is not there specifically to meet Deku. He appears to be surprised when he sees Deku. For me, it seems like the girls of class 1A are the ones who gather the whole class together for activities. Hagakure came with the idea of going to that shopping mall. Mina Ashido came with the idea of having that room competition. Hagakure didn't fight any of the villains. In the training camp, Hagakure even got knocked out by the gas unleashed by a villain. That couldn't be an accident nor something she did on purpose. Her location during the USJ attack. I also believe that Hagakure wasn't in the same place as Todoroki, but my reason is different, it's more of a speculation on her character as a whole. But I'll leave it out because it would be too much of an off-topic for this video. I highly doubt Hagakure being the traitor, because everything is justified by her quirk, the invisibility. She is invisible, thus she can sneak everywhere and communicate information to the villains. It's just too focused on her quirk and nothing else. To summarize my thoughts, I really don't think the manga would be like, ta-da, the two characters used mostly for comedic reliefs, Kaminari being dumb and Hagakure's invisible gags, are the super intelligent spies. In fact, most of the evidence for any of the students, Hagakure, Kirishima, Uraraka, Kaminari, you name it, are very shaky and pretty much use minor details that can be argued against really easily. I've personally always seen it as being hinted at a UA faculty member. I'll say this here because I couldn't find the right place for this, but one thing that bothers me is that in the USJ attack, none of the villains knew the students' quirks. If the traitor was in class 1A or was a faculty member that was teaching them, they would have been able to give that information after Aizawa's test on the first day of school. Not even Shigaraki or Kurogiri were aware of their quirks. Of course, this could be argued. The League of Villains were aiming for All Might and they didn't consider the students as threats, but I doubt someone like Kurogiri would neglect that. While I was working on this theory, I made a mistake and said to myself that the traitor must be a student, and the main reason for why I believed that was because, other than Aizawa and All Might, no other teacher is close or has any type of special relationship to the students of class 1A. So what good would any other teacher be as a traitor? It would shock the students, yeah, but any further than that? But then I thought outside the box and realized the students have no idea that there is a presumably traitor in the UA, nor did the plot revolve around the traitor after President Mike brought it up, and it's been over 100 chapters since then. We know that Principal Nezu is investigating, but then the whole traitor thing is cut off, which makes me wonder if the traitor isn't intended to have an actual impact on the faculty members rather than the students. If that's the case, then the traitor has to be a teacher, and I was able to come up with 2 names for the suspect. Based on the chapters 70, 74 and 83, very few people knew about the new location of this summer camp. The location known by the students was abandoned at the last minute. Only the Pussycats and the following teachers knew: Principal Nezu, All Might, President Mike, Midnight, Snipe, Aizawa and Vlad. Out of those, the only one we can really discount is All Might, and I'd say the Pussycats too, since they aren't that important for the overall story. Obviously, after the summer camp arc, we know that Himiko has the potential to be a spy, via either Uraraka or Tsuyu. Really, any of the other teachers are threats, though Aizawa or the principal would have a bigger shock value. But who can tell, because they were also the 2 who were aware that All Might wasn't going to USJ as planned and thus could have called it off or at least told Shigaraki. I'm also going to cross Snipe off the list for shooting the hell out of Shigaraki. He proved to be innocent in my eyes. That leaves us with President Mike, Midnight and Vlad. President Mike was the one who brought up the whole traitor thing. By doing so, he created agitation between the faculty members, and he used that opportunity as a loophole to cross himself off the suspects list. Remember that Principal Nezu said that he trusted every person in the conference room. However, as he has a quirk that makes him super intelligent, he may or may not figure out who the traitor is. It's possible that he might have said that he trusted everyone in that room to assure them that they are not suspects, leaving them with no lead while he comes up with a solution to deal with the traitor. But judging from what he says in chapter 98, he doesn't know the identity of the traitor. President Mike would make sense from a story perspective. He is well known by everyone from the UA and by us, the readers. He's probably the closest person to Aizawa canonically, and they had been friends for so long. Him being the traitor would crush Aizawa to bits, therefore causing problems for the students of class 1A, as Aizawa is their homeroom teacher. His signature smile suddenly feels so much creepier. But while I did write a 1,000-word script saying why I think President Mike is a traitor, I stumbled across someone else. Someone who I'm confident enough to call the traitor of UA. And my suspicions led me to none other than the teacher of class 1B, Vlad the Blood King. I didn't think about him before, but when I put all the pieces together, it makes sense. Let's go through this chronologically as it's easier to follow and start with the first villain attack at the USJ. Vlad is a teacher. It goes without saying that he knows the schedules. Chances are he probably takes part in creating those schedules. Class 1A and 1B are both part of the UA Heroes department, which means they both have very similar schedules. And among other courses, it's fair to say that Class 1B were also booked to have a rescue class in the USJ. Since All Might teaches foundational hero studies, he alongside 13 planned to stage the rescue mission of both classes. The villains just so happened to conveniently attack Class 1A rather than 1B. Blood shows up at the end of the invasion with the rest of the teachers because, essentially, that's his job. Any harm has pretty much been done by then. We also don't see him doing much other than carrying Nezu around. Now here comes the interesting part. None of the students knew where they were going for the summer training camp. The location wasn't revealed to them, and as Aizawa said, it was on a need-to-know basis, pretty much stating that the students had no idea. However, and this is very important, the League of Villains did know where they were going to be. Not only did they know the exact location, but they also had an action plan for who was going to do what and how. What that tells me is that it's a faculty member who is pulling the strings, and that person must be one of the homeroom teachers accompanying the students. And since Aizawa can't even be considered a suspect, the odds are against the little vamp Vlad. Naturally, the traitor would want to be as far from the fallout as possible, which is what Blood constantly does, especially during the training camp arc, where he spends most of his screen time safely away from all the action in the lodge. The lodge is the safest place to be during the attack. It's only ever attacked by fake versions of Dabi. Speaking of fake versions of Dabi, the only moment Vlad has with a villain is when Dabi's clone comes into his classroom. He overpowers and restrains him almost immediately, but Vlad is not actually hurting Dabi. Assuming he knows it's a clone, he could go all out even though they're on the same side. That could have also been a way to relay information subtly. Moreover, we know Dabi specifically attacks the lodge like that to keep the people inside occupied and away from Bakugo. What is also very interesting is that the class that night, when the villains attacked, was a last-minute decision made by Aizawa and Vlad because they were dissatisfied with the remedial students' progress. This change of events gave the villains the best opportunity they could have wished for to put their hands on Bakugo. He even tells Aizawa to stay in the building when the villains attacked, but Aizawa rushes out immediately. It's worth noting that Vlad only called for reinforcements after the villains successfully fled, as Deku states at the beginning of chapter 83. Also, Vlad didn't show up during the hideout raid because he was at the press conference along with Aizawa. That's why he couldn't inform the villains of the attack. But anyway, this is just my theory, my take on the whole traitor thing. And while I believe the traitor could be Vlad, at the end of the day it could be anyone else. But what do you think? Who do you see as being the traitor?